Hi, it's me again. Hi, Facebook. Hi, Instagram. And I guess when I upload it to YouTube. Hi, everybody. How you all doing? I hope you've had a great week, great day, or great time, depending on when you're watching this. I apologize. I couldn't come last week as planned. I just had so much going on. But I still felt, even today, I didn't really feel like coming because I had a bunch of stuff. And sometimes you just have to get your mind in the mood to do this. But I was just like, you know what, I have to. I felt compelled to do this. So 2 weeks ago, I started talking about the 4 P's to purpose using the life of Joseph, and the first one I talked about was the pit, how his brother had they were jealous of him and they stripped him of his coat of many colors because of the dream he had that he saw them and their parents bowing down to him, and they threw him into the pit. And I talked about how the pit was, from the pit they sold him into slavery, and they did not realize that they're selling him to the Midianites or the Ishmaelites. Was God using what they meant for evil to take him to where the manifestation of God's purpose of life was going to come to pass. We talked about Potiphar's house. I talked about Potiphar's house next. If you don't, you can check the videos on my page and you see it. If you're on Instagram, you just see clips of it. You can check my Facebook or YouTube page. Now, Potiphar's house was a place I said that Joseph learned his skills. The skills that he needed to acquire. It was a place that for him to, hi Sophie, was a place for him to learn his skills. And just give me a quick second. Quick. Yeah. So real quick, sorry. All right, I'm just going to continue. So in Potiphar's house was a place for him to learn skills, was a place for Potiphar to learn some things that was going to require him to keep his place in the palace. Because now, one thing that when Joseph had his dream, God never told him exactly what it was. Like God spoke to him in parables. As much as it was revealed to him that he was going to be great, God never revealed to him what exactly he was going to be great doing. And a lot of times I've talked about how we feel that there's a calling or there's something greater that God has for us, and we feel that maybe based on the gifts and the talents we have, that's what God is going to use to take us to where it is that he wants to take us to. However, sometimes the way God works, he could use something totally different from what we think. Anyway, so I'm going to continue. So real quick, I just want to share this on my personal Facebook page. Sorry. Sorry, I have to move this. Anyway, let me continue. Sorry to take your time. So, what God never told him what he was going to be great doing. God just told him that he was going to be great. And I feel that's where a lot of us miss it. But if we know that God makes all things work together for good, then we just have to trust the process. So I talked about how Potiphar's wife set him up and how he was thrown into prison. Now, I also talked about how we should not get too comfortable in Potiphar's house. Potiphar gave Joseph charge of everything in his house except his wife. He gave him charge of everything in his household except for his wife. After, and of course, the wife was tempting him and he resisted, and that got him thrown into prison. Now, sometimes that's how life is. It's like you find yourself, if you resist the temptation of the comfort zone, like I talked about, next thing you find yourself in a situation, does not necessarily mean it's physical prison, but you find yourself in a situation that you're like, oh my goodness, maybe I should have settled, maybe I should have compromised, maybe I should just have been patient, or what. It's not like maybe you were not patient, or maybe, oh God, it can be very confusing. However, the story continues in I think we ended in Genesis 39. It continues in Genesis 40. And while Joseph was thrown into prison, he was not bitter or resentful or anything like that. He still exhibited good traits that the guard assigned Joseph. he was made the captain of the guard, assigned them to Joseph. Joseph was in charge. And I'm going to read from verse 41. Now, sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended the master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer. All right, let me not go into much. But like I said, Joseph maintained a good character. He maintained a good behavior, and he was put in charge. And that gave him the opportunity to come across the cupbearer and the baker. See, in every, yes, sometimes we may get get confused, become bitter, become angry because of situations and circumstances we find ourselves. But because Joseph maintained his integrity, his good character, he was put in charge, and the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph. He got an opportunity to meet the cupbearer and the baker. Now, when he met the cupbearer and the baker, both men had dreams, and in their dream, they told Joseph their dream, and Joseph, wifo, they told Joseph their dream, and when they told Joseph their dream, Joseph, based on the gift that God placed in his life, he was able to interpret the dream. Now, I'm going to try and merge the prison and the palace in this whole message. So the first one was, like I said, the pit. The second one was Potiphar's house. The third one is prison. And the fourth one is the palace. Now, like I said, if Joseph had not maintained a good behavior, then the guard or the person in charge of the prison would not have put Joseph in charge of the cupbearer and the baker. And Joseph would never have had the opportunity to use his gifts that God had blessed him with to bless them. Now, after Joseph interpreted the dream of the cupbearer and the baker, when they got released, just as he had interpreted the dream, the cupbearer was spared, while the baker, hi Mike, good to see you, while the baker was killed. Now, years passed, a couple of years rolled back, and what happened was Pharaoh had a dream. Now, Joseph was wise enough to say, hey, when you guys get there, don't forget me. Or he told the cupbearer, when you get back to the palace, do not forget me. Sometimes when we find ourselves in pits, you know you have a dream for your life, and you find yourself in a situation where it's like, man, God, this is not what I was dreaming. This is not what I thought I'll be. This is not what I thought I'll be doing. However, he did not let what happened to him make him bitter. He still behaved like a child of God should behave. He still used his gifts and talents. So people be like, wow, why should I help anybody? I'm stuck in this place. You know, we get that stinking thinking or that bad attitude because we're facing things in life, which is understandable. It's just human nature. But Joseph did not. He told the cupbearer, remember me. However, the cupbearer did not remember him. But then God, in Genesis chapter 41, God gave Pharaoh a dream, and he gave the answer to that dream only to Joseph to interpret it. Because if you listen, there were other magicians in verse 8 of chapter 41. There were other magicians, there were wise men of Egypt and everything. But then there's a time, there will be a suddenly. Then the cupbearer remembered. You see how, God, like I said, is the divine orchestrator of all things. Chances that are, if the baker had been the one that was spared, he may never have heard, because the baker works in the kitchen, he may never have heard the dream that the Pharaoh had to tell Pharaoh that, I know someone that can interpret your dream. But the cupbearer is the person that drinks, to protect the king. The cupbearer holds the king's cup. Sometimes he's made to drink or taste what the king will drink, so he does not die. So he had a closer relationship with God, with Pharaoh. So when Pharaoh had this dream and no one could interpret the dream, he remembered Joseph. So Joseph was called and interpreted the dream of Pharaoh. And though there was no manifestation, it says in verse 32, Joseph said the reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in two forms, because Pharaoh had the dream in two forms, and he told Pharaoh that it's because this is an established matter. Now, Joseph had learned that because while he was in his father's house, he had his dream twice. The cupbearer and the baker, they had two dreams he interpreted. So he had learned a pattern. Now, if you go to verse 33 of chapter 41, that's Genesis 41, it says, after interpreting Pharaoh's dream, Joseph was smart enough to say, now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of all the land of Egypt. So just looking at where I took my notes. Joseph was smart enough to make a recommendation. You see, sometimes somebody asked a question in church on Sunday, a young guy. He said, do the gifts or the talents we have, do they necessarily mean that that's what God has called us to do? Sometimes we get it all wrong. Everybody these days, now, if you want to be a musician, gospel artist, or whatever it is you want to be, or you want to act, that is fine. But everybody, we get misdirected, thinking that the talents that God has given us is automatically corresponds to what God's purpose is in our life. In some cases it is, but not in all cases. You see, there were already magicians in the king's palace. Joseph was smart enough to go the extra mile that after interpreting Pharaoh's dream, he didn't just leave it as that. He also gave Pharaoh a recommendation. Now get someone. You see, he was pitching an opportunity for himself. He told him to get a wise and discerning person and put him in charge of whatever recommendation he was going to give him. So most times, we all know Joseph as the dreamer. Joseph dreams. Joseph could interpret dreams. Not only does he dream, he could interpret dreams. However, it was not Joseph's dream that kept him in the palace. The Bible says your gift will make a way for you. Joseph's gift, because he had the right attitude, right character, right behavior and everything, made a way for him. Yes, he was serving faithfully. Sometimes you might be serving faithfully in the house of God, leading praise worship when there's one person, 100 or 1,000 people there, and you're faithfully doing it. Sometimes that could be where God wants you to serve. He may occasionally use you to do great things, but that may not necessarily be his calling. Joseph's purpose in life was not to be a dream interpreter or a magi or a magician or whatever. It was the skills that Joseph learned in Potiphar's house, the administrative skills that gave Joseph the wisdom to pitch to Pharaoh that Pharaoh needs to put someone in charge of this process. Not only did he design the process based on the dream he interpreted for Pharaoh, he also made a job recommendation. And Pharaoh was like, where can we find such a person? And he looked at him and he said, you know what, Joseph, I'm going to put you in charge. I'm going to put you in charge of this because you're a wise and discerning person. See? Joseph, though Joseph was a dreamer, Joseph's dream was not what God had designed or desired to take him from prison to the palace. It was Joseph's skills that kept him there. Yes, the Bible says your gift will make a way for you. However, we also need to verify from God whether or not the gifts, your singing ability, your speaking ability is what God is going to use to take you to where he is destined for your greatness to be made manifest. We need to clarify things from God. So I'll show you something I found very interesting. We're still in chapter 41. It says, then Joseph said to the Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God made all this known to you, there's no one so discerning and as wise as you. Then verse 40, he says, you shall be in charge of my palace, and all people are to submit to you, to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. I just want to tie it real quick. He says, only with respect to the throne would I be greater than you. Now, this instruction Pharaoh gave Joseph was 100% similar to the instruction Potiphar gave Joseph. He said, I put you in charge of everything except my wife. And Joseph obeyed. Pharaoh said the same thing. I put you in charge of everything except my throne. You see, like I said, when you're at Potiphar's house, you may not understand the significance of the journey you are in, where you are. You know that is not your final destination, but you just can't seem to find a meaning. If Joseph had not been a person of integrity to obey what Pharaoh had, Potiphar had said, that I put you in charge of everything except my wife, then he would not have proved himself to be worthy to be in charge of everything in Egypt except for Pharaoh's throne. Sometimes those things that we've seen that seem not relevant in our process, in our lives, So it's all, apart from the skills we are learning, there are also test opportunities. Maybe you've been put in charge of little money and you mismanage it. Then sometimes God is like, okay, you did not show yourself faithful in this. Why should I put you in charge of something bigger? Or you're in charge of a small church and you're having a dream of maybe being in charge of a big church or whatever. You're in charge of that small business, that mom and pop business, and God is teaching you skills. Not only is he teaching you skills, he's also testing you to see how faithful would you be there on time. But the same character traits he exhibited while he was in Potiphar's house were the same things he did, the same instruction he was giving. I put you in charge of everything except. The same instructions Pharaoh gave him. I put you in charge of everything except. So the journey from when we started looking at from when Joseph had the dream in Genesis 37, I think was 13 years. He was 17 and it wasn't till he was 30 he ascended the throne. So what I just want us to learn from the pit and the palace is, yes, you may have resisted the comfort zone and decided to take a step, or because you resisted temptation or whatever, you've refused to compromise or you've refused to take shortcuts or whatever, you may have found yourself, or because you had a desire to do something greater, you decided to leave where you were to somewhere else, and you're going through what seems like prison. I just want you to know that sometimes it's that in those times, those dark times, those situations, that whatever it is that link us to our greatness. Maybe you meet someone, you're hustling or whatever, you meet someone and the person's like, I like your attitude. Because of this, I'm going to make you that. Or it just could be anything. That's why, though we're going through tough times, we should also try and maintain a good attitude, maintain integrity, because you never know who you could meet. You never know who you run to. You never know what opportunities may arise. But sometimes, because we're so blind with our pain, the process we're going through, we're so hurt, we do not even want to see anybody or anything. And if we're not careful, we miss out on great opportunities. So like I said, whatever situation you're in, this video is longer than I planned, but I just wanted to do the prison and the palace at the same time. Joseph knew that he had greatness in his life. God never told him that you're going to be prime minister or governor or whatever, but he just followed the process, and he maintained a good character, maintained a good attitude, maintained integrity. And as a result of that, he got to the palace. And like I'm just going to fast forward to Genesis chapter 42, verse 6. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the one who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. The manifestation of prophecy. So I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what situation it is. I don't know what this is just a case study. It could happen in any pattern, any way. I just hope it has blessed someone. It doesn't matter if you're currently in the pit or Potiphar's house or in prison, metaphorically speaking. I just want to encourage you that just hang on, maintain that attitude, trust in God, look unto him, the author, perfecter, and finisher of your faith. And in due time, the gift, the talents, the skills, and everything you've learned will make a way for you. I also want to tell someone out there, yes, the gifts you have may not necessarily, we need to pray to God. The gift, the talent, maybe talent is your natural inborn thing that God has placed in every one of us. Some people have great charisma. Some people can talk. Some people can sing. Also know that let's not be disappointed, because like Joseph, though that gift may make a way for you, we should be mindful that may not necessarily be God's ultimate plan for you. Do not get frustrated when you see somebody that you used to be in the same choir now has waxed an album, or someone you used to work with has started a business, or whatever it is. We need to trust God for our lives and for the process in which he's taking us through. Once again, this is Eliza Fan. Please share, subscribe, send your comments, discuss, show it to someone. I hope this has blessed you. And look through the videos from the pit to this ones, and I hope you are blessed. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for subscribing. Have a nice day. God bless you.